to my mom's house. We're in Joplin, Missouri. Joplin may know from that song about Route 66. I don't know.
You give your kicks on Route 66 and it goes right through here.
Hmm. But you grew up not too far from Route 66. You were born in
Is somebody trying to get that door open?
no,
What's
just
that?
Kenzie. in where were you born? We just have a relaxing interview.
I was born at my grandmother's house
Hmm.
uh, in Jasper County, out in the Bethany neighborhood.
Hmm. Does that mean on a farm?
Yes, and I was between Circoxie and Avila.
You can ask him to see me. Hello.
And my friend Lorraine was born that same night, and the doctor waited till she got born before he came to me,
Hmm.
because he said Mama had already had one child, and her mother hadn't had any children yet, and was just 17 and very scared.
Hmm.
So it's very
I
painful.
bet your mom was pretty scared and painful too.
Yeah.
But were you born on a different day because of that?
Yes, her birthday's the 3rd, and mine's the 4th.
How far is Coxie from here?
Well, from Joplin, I think it counts itself about 22 miles, but and I grew up in Circoxie, but I also grew up in the country in the neighborhood where I was born.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, my grandmother didn't live there anymore. She'd gone to town because she got a job.
Hmm. What about your family? Who all are members of your family or were when you were growing up?
Oh, well, I had a great grandma as
Mm-hmm.
well as a grandma.
Mm-hmm. They lived in the house?
Grandma Landis' mother, our daughter, was my grandma Mayo. She married Robert Mayo, who, after they had about 6 children, he died. He died because his kidneys wouldn't work. Or his bladder wouldn't work, and he burst. And anyway, she had to raise the children all by herself. Her mother-in-law came for a while. Her mother-in-law's name was Luella Chapman. She was Johnny Chapman, with Johnny Appleseed's niece. And she came down from Illinois and talked about them growing up on apple orchard. And Johnny had been out west, and so nobody knew what apple was.
Mm-hmm.
And
So which grandma took care of you a lot?
well, nobody took care of me a lot except Mother. When Daddy was drafted, I was born in 41 in November, and in December they bombed Pearl Harbor. The Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, and we went to work, and almost both of Mother's brothers,
Mm-hmm.
her mother had 3 brothers, one was too old, and besides that he was living up in Canada, and they drafted them, and there was a lot of things rationed because we couldn't take our ship some certain places because somebody would shoot at them out there. And LJ was born right after Daddy left. No, they let Daddy stay there until he left. LJ's 14 months younger than me, and LJ was born allergic to milk, and so he had to have bananas, and you were rationed to get so many bananas a month, and so my neighbors bought bananas and brought them to us.
So you all 3 of you were born during World War II? The 2 brothers and you?
No, well, Jay and I.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, see, with I was only a month old when Pearl Harbor was bombed, so I wasn't really. I was born just before.
On the cusp.
A month before.
Mm-hmm. Did you get to see your dad when you were born, or was he drafted after?
Well, he was drafted. Between the 14 months between the time I was born and the time LJ was born, they let him stay home until LJ was born, and then he had to go. And then we hardly knew him. We were scared of him when he came home.
Where did he go during the war?
He was on a ship, and he said they only saw enemy ship once. They were on tankers. They were hauling oil from Great Britain to Great Britain from Iran. And he said there was very, very poor people in Iran, and they'd come out and they'd do things like swallow broken glass to get you to give them $1. And it really made him sick. He wanted to get out and slap them for taking such a risk with their own lives. And he bought us dolls and things. He bought us little Dutch hats from Holland, and and he brought Mother little black elephants. There was one for each of us kids that was born, and one for Mother, and then there was a one, and it was made, and those were made out of walnut roots, and they were very, very black, and then polished into the wood, and it was mahogany, and it was reddish, and somehow or other I didn't leave the farm with it, so I guess it was left on the farm.
But there were a lot of odds and ends around the house growing up for you that your dad built. Weren't there that remind him or were memories from his travels in the war? Was there table items or?
Oh, that's what I'm talking about, the little elephants and things. No, there wasn't a lot of things because the dolls and things that he had, somebody stole them before he got off the ship. You had to go sign out and then you could go get your stuff. And she stole my cabbage waste, lettuce waste, not bad. It needs to be chopped up though. I don't know.
He said basically his job wasn't scary, but he was on an oil tanker.
Yes, he was. They put these young men on, both in planes and in ships that came from Arkansas and Missouri, because they said they've been shooting at rabbits since they were 7 years old. They know how to handle a gun, and they know how to aim a gun. And Daddy stood, and they did not have compasses the way we do today. And so he had to tell with his eyes on a ruler-like thing which number they should shoot over.
American Eskimo, huh?
That's enough for one time. My granddaughter's wanting to take some books home.
She's got a pile about this big.
Let's see if I pile them up. You want to? I want to pile them up on the ground.
No, Kenzie, could you? Yeah, not walk in front of our camera.
I'll do it later. I'll just walk over there.
Kenzie, they go the long way around.
Yeah,
she would walk around and look in the mirror.
No, that's not the long way around. The long way around is to go around that.
I don't see a difference.
Yeah, she's already crossed, so it doesn't matter now.
Yeah, but she's crossed about 17 times, and it's been hard for me to concentrate. But thank you for sharing. Let's go back to school. Do you remember anything interesting from your middle school days or other school days?
Well, I knew how to. The teacher said, "Now, what words do you know how to spell?" When we was in the first grade. And I knew how to spell Nabisco, and
and what else?
Cheerios. And
That's
several
good.
things like that. And the teacher was kind of impressed. Are they teaching you to do that at home? And I said, no. I spell the word and ask Mama what it is. And then I know.
Okay.
And so one day she said, now I want all the first graders to go and get your, they only had about 5 pieces of charcoal things for a blackboard, one across. And I want you to write your whole name down. So I put a D, and Donnie Coates put a D, and we looked at each other. And he put an O, so I put an O, and he said, no, that's my O.
Yeah, your O comes later.
But I remember that was the hardest thing I did was stand up there in front of everybody and couldn't spell my own name. And she had been giving us spelling words, but she hadn't given us her own name. So maybe somebody, Carol wasn't too good at school. And she may have been spelling her name wrong or something. That's why the teacher had us do that. But maybe she wanted us to practice printing too.
Did your brother follow you to school then in that grade? One grade behind you, or?
No, he was 14 months younger than me,
Mm-hmm.
but he was 2 grades behind me. So we were moved in Circoxie before the school was out my first year.
Mm-hmm.
But they took me. My parents took me back to school,
Mm-hmm.
and I think the teacher took us back to town when she went back to town.
Did do you recall anything about whether you liked life in town or you missed it being in the countryside at that time?
Well, we had 4 acres in town.
Oh.
We lived on a city street that was not paved
Mm-hmm.
after the highway,
Mm-hmm.
and we lived at the end of the first block beyond it. And uh, R.A. was told not to get his new white sailor suit dirty that he got for his birthday. And he got something on it, so he took his pants and his shirt off and washed them in a mud puddle.
And you watched?
Well, he wore underpants.
Mm.
He probably didn't have undershirt.
Mm. Mm. So you didn't help him wash.
And when there would be a big rain, the water would come up in the street. And since Daddy helped, Mama helped Daddy at the club on weekends, we were in trouble there. I remember one time we thought we were supposed to take all the furniture and put it someplace else, but there was just a babysitter and us, and there wasn't anything we could do except maybe take up a throw rug. But most of the time, I don't know that it really ever came in the house. One time somebody older was there, and we put the chairs in the picture window. We had a picture window that was higher than the floor.
Is this the 4 acres where R.A. lives now, or was this a different 4 acres?
No. When Daddy came home, he and Glendine decided they'd have a business. They would have a nightclub.
Mm-hmm.
And they built it themselves. They bought the land together, and they built it themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And they found out that it would not support 2 families.
Mm-hmm.
So Glendine, Daddy had to borrow more money back, Glendine's side, and give to him. And Glendine built a motel in the entrance to, it's in Colorado, very famous. It's Big Red Rock Cavern there.
Mm-hmm.
And he built his motel right there at the opening of it. And it was still there for a while, but the last 2 times I've been to Colorado, it wasn't there. I guess once they took it down, they never put it back. Because somebody else on
Probably Colorado Springs or maybe Denver. Yeah.
Well, the government was giving away land. They give 5 acres to anybody willing to come and live in Colorado, because the towns are kind of getting full on the east side of the country. And so they really need people to come to live between California, not in California, but between California and the rest of the country.
So, okay.
But Glendine went on to California, and he got a divorce, like all my relatives did that went to California, and and later they both came back to Circoxie, or she didn't come back to Circoxie. She came back at Neosho, 15 miles down the highway.
Do you have any lifelong friends from your school days?
Well, I haven't seen some of them. Keith and Buddy and Melba Southern, who were my second cousins, lived not too far from here. But I never see them. I wouldn't know them if I saw them. I did talk to some people named Southern that go to a little country church north of Joplin here, and they knew that, and the Southern, Mrs. Southern played their organ, but they didn't know them. They knew there were other Southerns over that way.
What about that nice lady who helped you move once? She went to school with you.
Lorraine?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Lorraine Henry and I were born the same night, same doctor, different mothers and houses, same community. And she came over in a little red well, she called me yesterday. We're
Mhm.
still very close. She was telling me that one of her granddaughters has taken in two children
Mhm.
that they cannot place. The parents want the people of the state to take care of them for a while because they can't, and so they're not up for adoption. So this, uh, anyway, the girl has brought them over to her house a couple of times, and the little boy don't want to go. He says, "I thought we were going to stay here. I think we're going to stay here." And she said she can't take him to the store. Her daughter did because hardly, but that the kids think they want to stay at the store. Is this where I'm going to stay now?
Mhm.
And I thought that was kind of sad. But Lorraine's got her own huge family.
Mhm.
I did the wedding for one. I did the funeral for her mother.
Mhm.
You know, and I talked to her dad that they mother was in the hospital with cancer in Joplin, and they was putting her dad on an elevator. He was on a thing, and I
Mhm.
went over to him and said, "Bob, it's Dolores." And he said, "I know." He said, "They're going to cut my leg off."
Mhm.
And so I said a prayer for him, and we stepped in the elevator, but they didn't take it up until I finished my prayer.
Mhm.
But he lived for a while after that, but not too long.
And any other people you went to school with around here, or relatives in Joplin, or?
Well, Lorraine called me yesterday and told me Helen Pilarski had died.
Mhm.
She was in my class. Pat Whitehead, that I mentioned a while ago, died. She was kind of related through the Whitehead to me,
Mhm.
to Aunt Maggie Whitehead,
Mhm.
and that also meant they had Delaware blood.
Greetings to anybody watching. Um,
Are you getting bored by now?
no, let's see. Stuart, are you there? Give us a wave. Or Nancy, or Fable, if you're there, give us a wave. Um, did you do you have any other relatives in Joplin area right now?
No. When my grandmother got older, Grandma could not drive. Grandpa left her a car, but she
Mhm.
couldn't afford to keep a car once it broke down,
Mhm.
and she moved from the country there. My grandmother and my great grandmother,
Mhm.
which mother and daughter,
Mhm.
lived across from where we lived
Mhm.
uh, in a time when I don't remember where we lived there, next to the Bethany Church. And then we moved down behind the Methodist Church, and there wasn't any houses, just fields between us,
Uh-huh.
their house and mine.
She moved here, but you have like Keith lives out here, and Sis, and
Yeah, Keith lives near Joplin, in a little town that's not a town, but it's got a store
mhm.
and a water district box, building.
Mhm.
He and Keith is my sister Glenda's oldest child. He's a boy. He was in the Navy for a short time.
And well, don't wasn't there an aunt or cousin that lived near him,
Oh, no,
Sis or somebody?
yes. Daddy's sister Flossie and a number of his cousins
Mm.
drifted to Joplin when they got older.
Mm.
Mother, I think Sis came because Arch, her husband, was sick, and the doctors were here. We only had one doctor at a time in Circoxie, and sometimes we were in between for a short time.
Mhm.
Uh,
And you've got a lot of relatives still in Carthage and Surfaxi areas, don't you?
my sister Nancy, that I mentioned a while ago, they had one girl and adopted one girl,
Mm-hmm.
and um, those girls have been prolific, and she has a number of grandchildren and great grandchildren.
Mm-hmm.
One of them, one of the great grandchildren's husband is fighting in Afghanistan now,
Mm-hmm.
and so we've been trying to keep Colby in prayer. People keep calling him Colby with an L, but there's no L. When I met him, he had a little sign on because he didn't know the family. He wanted to know who he was, and he had wrote Coby. So his name was Colby.
Mm-hmm.
And even though he has died,
Mm-hmm.
not died, he's gone to war. she's expecting a baby, and she either told me she's 5 months along or had 5 months to go at Christmas,
Mm-hmm.
and so he won't be here when the baby's born.
Well, we'll see. Um,
He's in the army.
what
I don't know
what
his
about
rank.
relatives in Sarcoxy?
They're all distant.
No. We've got R.A. and Glenda and their
Oh.
kids.
Yeah. Now, Glenda lived in Morocco when her husband was in service for a while, and then they lived in California. And Nancy was very happy that Glenda was living in California at the time she lost her husband there,
Mm. To have
because
some support.
she had support, and that was sort of a miracle thing. And then they my sister Glenda, they built a house. Daddy helped them build it, did most of it, I think. And he and Gerald
Mhm.
built him a house near on
Mhm.
real Sarcoxy, where we had the strawberry fields and things.
Mm-hmm.
But Gerald made a mistake. To save him money, he made hot water heat. And there was something you couldn't do to change that in the house, because you'd have to tear up every room and things,
Mm-hmm.
because it didn't work. Heat was in the walls. There was no
All right.
opening.
Well, I was really just asking about relatives. Do you have a lot of relatives in Sarcoxy then? Through Glenda and Gerald?
Yeah, their daughter Patty lives outside of it, and their grandson Donnie lives in it. And Rachel had 6 kids. She's the granddaughter of Patty's, but she had 6 kids, and they're all over the area. And some of them have been married more than once.
Mm-hmm.
I think she had a grandchild and a great grandchild born the same month last year.
Okay.
I don't.
Where are your families scattered?
I have 4 children.
Me, I'm one.
He's number 2. Not in liking. I didn't make any preferences.
I'm
But-
Kevin, right?
Ronald Paul was born first. She called the funeral home in it began with the E. I can't think of the name of the town.
Mm.
The next town, and told them to come find a body that would be hanging in her garage
Mm-hmm.
or barn, and
Mm-hmm.
she hanged herself.
Oh my God. I don't know if I like this story. What led you to share?
That one. Well, it just was things I wasn't expecting. So much fell on me all at once.
Oh yeah, that was a bad year, huh?
So one night the priest came over to introduce himself, which was still the first couple of weeks. It was the same time I was expecting the superintendent,
Mm-hmm.
but my light bulb had burned out or quit in the living room,
Mm-hmm.
and the priest came by, and he was, and I didn't even have a chair,
Mm-hmm.
and because I hadn't, there wasn't any furniture
Yeah.
like there should have been. So, well, they didn't have to. Kansas had changed it because people wanted their own furniture.
Mm-hmm.
So he was helping me turn the light on. The superintendent come, and
Mm-hmm.
I introduced him and told him that he'd come by to say hello, and he said, "Well, I'll go on if your superintendent's here."
So, Ma, what is your idea of those preachers?
And he. Okay.
And
Okay.
so he did go on, and things got a little better after that. Oh, except a new family came to town, and their boys were 13 years old, and they each had their own small motorcycle,
Mm-hmm.
and they were getting their gas out of the gas tanks that belonged to their only gas station.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went up to invite them to my church. I thought the boys needed it too.
Mm-hmm.
And when I got there, the city fathers had just been there and told them they didn't want their kind of people in town to get those boys out of here. And things happen you're not expecting.
As a minister. Wow, you didn't tell me any of those stories when I was growing up again. All right.
During the World War, you you were little, right?
But
World War Two.
yes, I was little.
So how did your mother keep you safe? Your family safe?
There was three of us.
Three. Okay.
Well, we were not involved in the war, though.
Yeah.
The United States did not have any bombings or anything
Yeah,
here.
that's a good thing that you are going to talk about what did you do while
Oh.
during the war.
Well, could you?
There was things like I said. My brother was born allergic to bananas, and we could not get them,
And allergic to milk.
or allergic to milk, and we had to make his milk out of bananas.
And there was short supply. Well, Vic, we're finished. We'll catch you later.
What you will say?
Bye bye. Please subscribe.
Thank you. Thank you, Vic.
Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe to Kevin's Stoda channel. Bye bye.